in different places of political spectrum, and pro-Islamic also on different positions. So my claim is that, you know, those controversies cannot be mapped on this binary framework, this binary opposition, because it's not that on the one hand we've got xenophobic, Islamophobic, conservatives, narrow-minded, you know, apologists of cultural purity and homogeneity, and on the other hand open-minded, pro-democratic, blah blah blah. It's not the fact. It's much more complex, and which is particularly interesting for me is this very unwanted functional alliances between xenophobic Christian conservatives and some liberal anti-religious feminists and LGBT activists that were actually activated by this kind of discussions. And because then we see, on both sides, people are against Islam, but for different reasons actually. Yeah? The premises are different. Sometimes the result is the same. And for me, which is very symptomatic, is that I can give you, well, if you're from Poland, you will read the names. This is the particular context in which you can hear liberal feminists like, for example, Magdalena Środa, and Christian conservative, anti-feminist, authoritarian Christian conservative Jarosław Gowin speaking in the same voice, anti-Islamic voice. And so this is functional alliance. They speak from different positions, but they are against Islam. So this is something weird and very interesting politically and theoretically. That's why I'm saying that when we discuss this kind of different, separate subaltern context, so it's not only hegemonic discourses and hegemonic spheres of public sphere versus subaltern. It's not clear, this binary, because we've got different subaltern counter-publics, different spheres of discursive production, which are subaltern, which struggle with hegemony, you know, heteronormative, patriarchal, blah, 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 but they are in conflict somehow. You know? Like you've got these feminist LGBT counter-publics, pro-Muslim, pro-immigrant counter-publics. I mentioned here some names of feminists who are very strongly anti-Islamic. And they include also some women coming from Islamic backgrounds. So now we are countered with this problem. And obviously, if you know writings by Judith Butler, she is one of those who confront the problem. Especially, I mean her Frames of War. There is this 2009 book in which you've got one chapter devoted to this issue. And where she actually says about this conceptual and political problem that somehow we, by the structure of discourse, we are forced into this situation where we either struggle for women's rights and sexual freedom, and then if you do that, we naturally adopt, we, in quotation mark, we actually adopt this kind of anti-religious, anti-Muslim discourse because Muslims are perceived as homophobic and patriarchal and oppressive to women. So you have to forget about being nice to Muslims if you want to be feminist and LGBT activist. Or you are pro-immigrant, pro-Muslim, and then you actually kind of diminish this issue of women's rights and sexual freedom. And it's so Judith Butler looks at the situation and says this is impossible and false alternative, but somehow it operates. And so she tries to find an alternative framework for thinking about the politics that would not antagonize these two counter-publics or two, positions, political positions. It's very difficult for many different reasons. Maybe we'll discuss that. But so in her book Frames of War, she talks about this issue, and you probably know her decision not to accept civil courage awards that she was supposed to get in 2010 in Berlin, where she came. That was a parade organized by LGBT organization. She came there, she was invited, and she was supposed to get this award. And then she got on the stage and she said, no, I'm not taking this award, because, first of all, she wants to protest against anti-Muslim racism present in feminist and LGBT movement, and because she was convinced that there was a number of organizations that were against all, problems, confronted with many problems, were trying to find a way of acting, struggling against homophobia and heterosexism, at the same time with struggling against Islamophobia and anti-immigrant racism. So she mentioned this particular organization and she said, no, I'm not accepting this award. And that was what she said. I must distance myself from this racist complicity, including anti-Muslim racism. And so I will read the whole statement. We all have noticed that gay, bisexual, bisexual, lesbian, trans and queer people can be instrumentalized by those who want to wage wars, i.e. culture wars against migrants by means of forced Islamophobia and military wars against Iraq and Afghanistan. In these times and by this means we are recruited for nationalism and militarism. Currently, many European governments claim that our gay, lesbian, and queer rights must be protected, and we are made to believe that their new hatred of immigrants is necessary to protect us. Therefore, we must say no to such a deal. To be able to say no under these circumstances is what I call courage. So she actually emphasized that gay and feminist movement is instrumentalized for, this political aims of imperialism, nationalism. But she also suggested that this kind of racist discourses are present in feminists and in LGBT movement. And, well, actually, in the book, she shows why it is so easy to somehow, sometimes unwittingly adopt this kind of racist language. Because the framework of thinking about emancipation is strongly linked to this modernization concept. So she's actually unpacking the situation and the concept of emancipation as linked with sexual freedom, modernity understood in a particular way. So anyway, again, this discussion takes slightly different form when transported to Polish context, but I don't want to mention another. So for me, what is particularly interesting in this talk, and I was just referring to Dorota Grobelna problems with finding arguments, not only in discussions with authorities and Catholic Church, but also with people who identified as feminists or LGBT. So I'm referring to my own experience as well, that we were confronted in these discussions with arguments from different sides. And it somehow illustrates the complexity of the Muslim question and the complexity of the problem that you actually involved by your project. And so, there were so many factors against the project from so many different sides that it must have failed.
It must have failed. Well, now we were standing in front of the human rights defenders.
Yeah.
So that was all of a sudden very tricky situation that you had these people from not far right, from kind of center right, whatever, grouped around the idea of defending the European values, the human rights, and of course women's rights.
Yeah.
Women's rights, sorry. So that was a scary situation. We had absolutely no answer to that. We were completely surprised by the rearranging the
discursive field.
That's what it's exactly. Yeah, and we knew these people, but when, in the situation when the young man, being in his 20s, is raising his hand and saying, so you want to repress the women? That was very hard to find any answer.
Especially since you produced yourself several feminist art pieces before, and so therefore finding yourself in this position must have been particularly tricky.
And this phallic form of the minaret.
Yeah, phallic form of the minaret, immediately. That was immediately follows all of a sudden the name of Poznań. So, and also we witnessed another regrouping was during this Islamophobic demonstrations around the same time against the mosque in Ahota here in Warsaw, which was somehow immediately linked to the building in Minaret in Poznan. We saw hand in hand pro-Israeli protesters, in this case against the mosque, women rights defenders, and Buddhists. So that was absolutely a new configuration, and we understood the reasons why they were there, but it was really to get an answer to that, to kind of prepare ourselves conceptually for this new situation. It took time. We just decided that we have to educate ourselves first, and this was the moment. I mean, very early on when we turned to you for help, really, just to get to know where we are in this project, because we seriously got lost in the beginning.
Okay, I will intervene now because I believe this is a fair moment for having a small break, just in order for the discussion not to be kind of mal-driven, maybe by fatigue or something. So let's maybe get some fresh air, some of us, and some less fresh air, some of others, and we'll start in like 10 minutes, or let's say, okay, to discuss. Thank you very, very much for both of the presentations, and we'll get back to you very soon. Thanks a lot. Dyskusja była bardzo ciekawa, bardzo skomplikowana i też się dla mnie